3, 2, 1, go.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from three Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is season 2, episode 16, and today we have a fantastic guest with us. We have Tori Fox from the Mandatorian Creed. Hi, thanks for coming.
It's so awesome to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for being
great.
here. We appreciate it.
Great to have you. I know you were part of Geeky Waffles Winter Soldier live streams on Friday, so we didn't cross over because we were on.
I don't think I did. I don't know if I did Winter Soldier. I did WandaVision a lot. I'm trying to think. I don't know if I went on for Winter Soldier, but yes, love the Geeky Waffles. Love them so much.
Marvel one. We were doing the
Mandalorian one.
We didn't have any crossover, but love what your inputs there. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, thank you.
So many things happening that can't keep them all straight. But felt you would be like a great fit to talk to us, and obviously, since now you're having the Mandatorian Creed as part of actual radio, and we've been talking with Alden a couple of times. It's like great synergy here. It's like keeping it among friends. So definitely glad to have you here. So I don't know if you have seen any of our other episodes, but when we have a guest, we like to talk to them personally and get to know them so we can all become friends, and our viewers and listeners can also get to know you. So let's talk about you a little bit, like I said. So why don't you give us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you're doing, how you got into Star Wars, that type of thing.
Well, I've pretty much been into Star Wars for as long as I can remember. I'm one of those people, and I know I wouldn't have it any other way, but I think it's a little boring because it's like, I don't remember the first time I saw Star Wars. Like, I don't really have some wild story about like my first encounter, but I'm really grateful it's been a part of my life. So my family introduced it to me, from the womb. I don't even know. And growing up, I went to basically, I don't even know the first time I watched it. So
that's good.
Wouldn't be surprised if they were like holding up the headphones to my mom's stomach or something,
Instead of like classical music, it's Star Wars
Beethoven
to the
womb.
Yeah. Honestly, I think that's like probably like the preferable.
That's like true.
Absolutely.
That's some good parenting.
We endorse that type of parenting here.
Absolutely. So I grew up going to Star Wars weekends. I live in Florida. I live in the Orlando area. And I was born and raised here. So going to Star Wars weekends was a really cool event they had at Disney that was all Star Wars focused. So
oh wow.
And they'd have a whole, which shameless plug, my first series on the Mandatorian Creed is about Star Wars weekends, if you haven't heard about it. But it was just this really unique event where I feel like that was the first time I realized that there was like a fandom community and that there were other people that felt the way that I did. And it gave me a lot of chances to like, they had autographs with people who worked on Star Wars or people who were like actors, actresses. And so obviously I met a lot of really cool people that way that were like, like Billy D. Williams or Amy Allen, who was Ayla Secura. So like that was really cool. But I also got to meet like Doug Chang, like some people that were that worked like behind the scenes. So that was kind of my first taste of behind the scenes content as well. So I definitely feel like my fandom influenced like my life trajectory. I went to special effects makeup school because I just wanted to make aliens and learned a lot.
Awesome.
Got a lot of really cool, thank you, love them so much. They're like my favorite part of Star Wars. So with that, I learned so many different skills that are applicable like to makeup, of course, but beyond that. And because of where I live, there's a really big scenic industry. So that's, and particularly for making things for theme parks. So I've been in the scenic industry for 3 or 4 years now. And I've got to make some really cool things for theme parks around the country. And then this past year, I kind of went and did my own thing and started Creature Cartel. So that's kind of like my backstory, I guess. But definitely pretty much everything I've done has been linked to Star Wars in some way, like definitely influenced always.
Do you feel like, it's almost like, do you feel like your inner child is like, yes, I'm doing what I wanted, like what I've seen?
Oh yeah. And
Awesome.
I mean, like, it's one of those things too, where it's like, I don't know if I'll ever, I don't know if I'll ever be like fully satisfied, if that makes sense, because I don't know, like I just want to make things, and I want to experience different like forms of art and try out new things, and hopefully contribute to like this thing that I love so much. So yeah.
What will be like that dream? What will be?
I mean,
The
I would
ultimate.
love to do.
Well, not the ultimate, but just
ultimate
like
form.
the I'm proud. I got there. Like, and the next thing that comes next, what will be that?
I guess it's kind of a hard question. I kind of feel like I'm not super picky. I would love to work for Lucasfilm in any capacity.
Yeah.
Particularly recently, I've and with my last Scenic job that I had, I kind of started doing design work more, like instead of someone handing me, here's a blueprint, we want you to build this, it was me making kind of like the ideas to make, and that was really cool and really empowering. And so I'm kind of starting to look into more like concept design and things like that. So I would love to do something like that. Like I would love to just like create the visuals, and I'm not picky about what that job title is, like whatever,
but still being the creator of it, and having it be your ideas and you actually build them to fruition. Yeah.
Like
Well,
that,
you hit like a good point that I like to discuss, because I'm also like into the design aspect. So like I am curious then, like how a couple of things, like in the scenic stuff that you've been doing for theme parks, how does that work? How does that function, right? In terms of like how you're, in the studio or where you're working, how does that job get into your studio? What do they request, in what shape, and then how does it produced? What's the timeline of those,
like the pipeline? Yeah. It's I feel like it really varied because of where I'm at location wise. Like Disney was a big one, same with Universal, but it kind of depends on what the job is, because sometimes there are things that are special events that they're doing that are super quick. Hey, we need some props. They'll come in. A lot of times it's they have everything mapped out already and they hand you that blueprint, right? But sometimes there is, which is really fun, there is a little bit more of a collaborative effort in testing out colors or testing out textures or something like that. I did a lot of like paint work, especially towards like the past couple of years. Like I specialize more in paint, so like that was a big thing that I did, and that's very collaborative and very let's give this a try. If we don't like this, we'll move to something else. And then sometimes even the designs can be like collaborative a little. You could tweak it a little, kind of add your own little flavor to it if there's something that you think that it needs, and kind of run it by them, and it's all good. So so sometimes it's very specific things, and sometimes it's, hey, this is the idea of what we're looking at. How do you think that you would build this? So yeah. And again, timeline is kind of all over the place. Sometimes it's a big thing, especially if it's something that's a permanent fixture in a park. That's always going to be right. Like that's going to be that maybe takes a little longer. Like I said, with props for like shows or something, that can be a very quick turnaround time. So it's definitely a very wild industry to be in. I'll say that. It's very fun, very rewarding. Can also be very stressful though.
I can imagine, but exactly, the rewarding aspect must be the best part, because not only are you contributing right to worlds that we all live in, in the cinema or at TVs, but you get to live in and experience it and create it for other people. So definitely great thing.
And I would say, go ahead.
No.
I say, I think some people ask me, like, oh, well, you didn't really stick with makeup or whatever. And like, I still do makeup on the side and stuff sometimes, but I would say probably one of the biggest things for me has been doing makeup is really cool and really fun. And I learned, how to do facial prosthetics, cowls, like you name it. I kind of learned everything. And those things are so much fun and they're gorgeous. But you can spend months on this thing, and you put it on someone for like a commercial for like, and then that's it, day, and it's over.
Done. So Tori, you were talking about the makeup. Yeah. So you don't think maybe it's as rewarding as, what you're doing now, that's like more permanent?
Yeah. So I would say it's still really rewarding, but I think there is something to be said for being able to have something that's more permanent. You're not getting rid of, at the end of the day, when you're done putting a monster makeup on someone, you just have to kind of take it off, and that's the end of it. And so it's
nice hours of work.
Yeah, hours and hours of work, putting on prosthetics can take several hours, hours and hours of work, and then you have time to take it off. So when you do scenic, you're spending a really long time, often maybe more than makeup, but at least you have something that you can go and you can look at and say, this is the thing that I made. And, you know, thousands of people a day sometimes are able to enjoy it and like touch it maybe. And that's really cool. That's really cool. It feels like a more, I guess, inclusive experience. It just feels, I feel more connected to people, I guess.
Okay.
So you're making makeup for reality now instead of just one person. So.
Correct. Exactly.
You're still doing makeup.
It's a different form of makeup.
Like creative construction.
Oh, I like that.
Because it's basically a lot of the stuff for the theme parks is making something that's totally different look like something else, you know? Because when you look at something like a tree, like that's definitely not an actual piece of wood. It's going to be maybe concrete or maybe like another type of material called polygem. Like there's a bunch of different things that you would use to make something look convincingly like something else. Okay. That would also be durable and safe.
that will last a time.
Staying from my curiosity, right? Because I'm an architect, so like we have to do like our drawings, and our drawings have to be built exactly like we draw them. So there's like not a lot of room for error in like how we produce these things. So in terms of like what you're doing, I'm curious. I assume that there's like obviously concept drawings that you're doing for these things, but when it's time to build them, is it more like how flexible are you in terms of like how it evolves from the concept drawings or concept designs that you're doing for it to like the final built product?
Yeah, I would say, again, I think it depends on what it is you're specifically doing. I've been able to I got to work a little on like haunt things like Halloween Horror Nights. So stuff like that I think is a little bit more lenient in terms of because it's not permanent, and it's also a little bit more collaborative just because it's not a year-round thing. But you look at something like pieces for like Disney or something like that, or a more permanent structure. Those are, especially with like the if there's like an inner construction for something, like if you have to build like a steel kind of structure that will fit inside of something so that it stays upright. There's definitely, especially with the design of that kind of stuff, there's a lot of safety that's involved with that. So I would say way less wiggle room on that, because you do have to keep safety clearly, as we know.
Yeah.
And other theme parks as well. When you're making something permanent, especially somewhere like Florida where there's hurricanes and things like that, you don't want something to get like knocked down. So
that would ruin someone's day.
That's not okay.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
But no, but now I have a question. I think that's interesting because so you deal with like how these concepts come to be. Then my question will be, if you see them, do you like still see the magic of like, oh, this kind of looks like the whole concept you want others people to see, or do you just now see like the details of like, oh, this is just like what it is, like, or both, like.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Honestly, I think it's both. I can see, and I also think it depends on who you ask. For me, like I grew up in theme parks, so I don't know. I feel like the magic's always going to be there. And I think visually, I really like to get lost in the environment of it all. So it is, I still think for me, like the magic is super there. I think in a lot of ways, I've gained even more appreciation for a lot of that stuff, because I do look at something that maybe I didn't make, right? But I can still look at it and say, oh, wow, like that looks like that's made out of, this, and it looks like they did this to get that like effect. And like, oh, like I definitely have a higher appreciation because I know like a lot of this stuff, it's not easy to build.
Yeah. You can see
things.
Yeah. You can see it and kind of know how much work went into it.
Yeah. And like how many hands touched it, how many different, meetings, and how many different blueprints, and like all of it. Yeah.
I imagine it's in a way like when at least when I was growing up, and I would buy all the DVDs for all the movies that I loved, especially going to the second DVD. It's like all the behind the scenes stuff. and seeing all that production design stuff, like for me, that made the movies like so much more interesting because like there's this group, like army of people behind it that like have to be like creative to like an absurd amount to kind of get this pushed out the door. So I imagine like in that way it enhances the experience. Yeah, and some people, like you were saying, like don't like to watch those behind the scenes or know how things is made because somehow the illusion is broken. But I don't know. I think it adds a more illusion for me because it's more magical to know how things are made because it's like someone had to think it out of nowhere.
And it's impressive. It's impressive to think about all the work that goes into it for sure.
And even the smallest of details. Like I remember like the first time I went to like one of the parks, like it wasn't like how realistic it looked. It was like how they hit like the speakers. I was like, like they look like rocks, or they look like part of like the whole environment, and you're like, wow, that's like so cool that even like the specific parts are like, so thank you for working on and like making that part of reality.
Thank you. I mean, it's been like an honor to work on everything that I've worked on. What I will say is like you bring up the speakers, like it is wild because of course we have appreciation for them in other forms of media because, you know, scenic workers are not just for theme parks. That just kind of happens to be where I'm at. You know, scenic workers are for movies, for plays, and, you know, movies, of course, incredibly impressive, but Disney and Universal and places like that, those are places that you don't have like a backside where you can see, you know, you can see the structure, the steel structure holding it up. You don't have like, it never stops. You can't have kind of that behind the scenes of it all for you to see, you know what I mean? Like you have to, it's like living in a movie. It's so much more, it's so vast, it's so expansive, you know, like you said, the speakers, there's music playing, and there's always like a lot of thought that goes into that. One of my favorite things that kind of passed on to me by my mom, because my mom's obsessed with it. If you go to a theme park, specifically somewhere like Disney, I encourage you to look at the ground for where you're at, because there is a person that their entire job is to figure out what is the ground going to look like here. And you go to somewhere like the Dumbo ride, and they've made cement peanuts that are in the ground, and you can see the peanuts, and you go somewhere like, you know, Galaxy's Edge, and you can see Gonk Droid, you know, footprints. Like everything is so well thought out. It's amazing.
Now I want to go to
I mean,
just look at the floor the whole time.
Just to look at the floor.
To a theme park in
I've
20
given
years,
you a horrible habit.
It's like I remember like when I had been there, like they had to, like, it was one of those things where you have to find like the Mickey ears everywhere because there's like Mickey's hidden everywhere.
Oh yeah, hidden Mickeys are everywhere. And there are even some, like, I'm sure, I feel like they pop up all the time, and there's like a book you can get, and there's different editions, like they're always adding stuff.
Wow. It's like scavenger hunting.
Yeah,
it's really cool. Yeah.
But speaking of, because we were talking about movies and how the scenic work you're doing isn't limited to theme parks. Universal and Disney, right? They're not only focused on theme parks, obviously, they have like their film divisions. So like I'm curious to know, like, if in the work you've been doing, there has been at any point like any crossover between what you're doing for the parks going into movies, or vice versa, or the movies going to the parks. Like has that been an experience you've been a part of?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, as far as like film stuff go, anything that I've done film wise has been like makeup related, and it's not been anything like I would say super impressive. But definitely
don't sell yourself short.
It's been like a commercial or two, but and they were fun. But as in terms of Disney specifically, or I mean really Universal too, a lot of times it's things that are already recognizable to the public that would be like a movie or a TV show or something like that. So absolutely. I mean, I've worked on quite a few things that I would say are directly linked to movies and TV. And that made it, for me anyway, like a more heightened experience. Like, I mean, I've definitely worked on things that I love dearly. I've worked on things that I maybe didn't really know about when I started working on it. And I went in and I did that research, and I watched those movies or that show or whatever. And it really is an exciting experience. And I like that too, because you have such a better, I'm all about reference and accuracy and all of that. So you have that reference there that you can refer back to, that you're like, okay, I'm working on this thing. I can watch this and I can say, okay, that looks like that, or if there's something that you need to maybe tweak or something that you need to fix, you can say, okay, I have a feel for this world now. I can kind of, so it's cool. I would say it's also intimidating because clearly it's not something completely made up. You have to have it look accurate.
Right.
Yeah. You have to live up to the standard. Yeah.
Correct.
And then speaking of that accuracy, right, that you're talking about, like what you're doing for this scenic job, I think that you do the opposite, right? When you're doing the things for the Creature Cartel, you don't have to be particularly accurate. You just have to like convey like the spirit of what you want to produce, because obviously you're not doing one-to-one replicas all the time of things. So like, why don't you tell us a little bit about the things you do with Creature Cartel and like the products you do? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I really like to use the word spirit. That's kind of my whole thing with this has kind of been is I, like you said, like I'm a big fan of design. I love it. I'm a big fan of kind of looking at a character and thinking of what makes this character visually so iconic. What is something that I can pull from this character's outfit that is very much resembles them, but is not like super in your face. I'm a big fan of Star Wars merch in general, but the one thing I will say is that I enjoy subtlety. So sometimes it's kind of hard when you're looking for specifically like accessories or purses or whatever. Sometimes it's hard to find the subtlety. So I basically what I've been doing is kind of looking at certain characters and figuring out how can I translate this into like a wearable piece of art that is still, if you run into a Star Wars fan, they're going to say, oh, like that looks like this, or this reminds me of this character, but it's not so in your face.
Right. It's not branded. It's not like
correct.
Wars, a Disney company. Were you doing like before you started Creature Cartel? Were you doing like pieces like that before you decided to like start up the store, or was this something like you decided to do the store and then you started doing pieces? Was it more like a fluid thing?
So it's kind of been all over the place. I'm not gonna lie. I've been making weird odds and ends and things for myself for a really long time. I enjoy doing. It is cosplay. I feel weird saying like I'm a cosplayer though. Like I feel like that's such a
that's like a high bar.
Yeah. I've been creating weird stuff for a long time for myself. And it actually kind of all started with Star Wars Celebration Chicago. I knew there were a couple friends that were going to be there that specifically a couple of them, it had like just been their birthday, or actually one of my friends, Savannah, I think it was her birthday when we were there. And so I made Japor snippets, which are the necklace, the little like charm that Anakin gives Padme in The Phantom Menace. And so I made 3 of those, and looking back on them, you're like, yikes. Definitely have improved, which is good. Which is so good. And like at the time I was so proud of them. My friends still cherish them. It's all good. But they loved them and they wore them actually for a good part of the weekend, which I was like honored by. And they kept telling me, I have people coming up to me all the time saying, where did you get this? Like, I want one. So I made a little storefront on Etsy like a couple months later when we came home. And just because I know a lot of people were asking, so I was like, okay, like, why not? Sure.
Might as well. Yeah.
So I made a few sales here and there. I think my boyfriend and I made a couple buttons just for fun, like designed some buttons. And then, I kind of was just sitting there. I didn't really promote it a lot. It was just kind of like a thing that existed. And then COVID-19 happened. And the job that I was at the time, they were not super good about guidelines for COVID. And it just, I was like, I think I need to go. But I didn't really have any plan. I was like, I don't know what's going on. So, so I quit my job, which is like really scary. Obviously, everything was scary last year. Let's be honest. So, and so I started, I had a couple other ideas that I thought were like fun jewelry ideas, and I just like started doing it. And I really well received by like my friends, and I would say like really and truly without the support of this community, like I would not this would still not be a thing. I probably wouldn't have been able to survive on the shop. Like, I'm so very grateful. The Star Wars community has been amazing and super receptive to like the stuff I've made. So yeah, here we are, like over a year later.
Congratulations.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so
inspiring.
grateful for it. I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it.
I'm glad I also quit my job last Friday. So
Oh,
that's
Yay!
inspiring. Yes. Same reason. So
I mean, it's definitely been a year of transformation, I think, for a lot of people. So like, it's always
absolutely
great and inspiring to hear that, that people are able to invent or reinvent themselves in positive and constructive ways. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Now, would you say that your pieces are kind of, because I know you do like a lot of things and there's a lot of different themes based on characters or shows, right? Either Mandalorian or Clone Wars, etc. Would you say that each thing you do is like a collection, that it's like, okay, this is a collection I did and it's over and it's not coming back and there's a new thing? Or is everything like something that's always going to be available? What's your strategy?
Yeah, it's kind of evolving and stuff, I would say. I honestly, I mean, pretty much I've been really lucky. I would say there've been a couple things that I've made that have not done well at all. Those things are no longer up. That's fine. But I mean, I've been really lucky that a lot of my stuff has been really well received. So for the most part, there've been a few things that I've cut out just because they've been maybe a little more time consuming to make than I would say is actually worth it. And just some things that I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'm just like, I'm a little tired of making this. Let me just take a break for a minute. But for the most part, I've kept up a lot of the stuff. There's been an intent occasionally, I would say, to have like a collection. Like I did, I have some Padme earrings on my website that I kind of all release at the same time. Those are still up. So yeah, I've been a little more intentional, I would say, sometimes with releases as time has gone on. But I'm also at the same time just kind of vibing, just kind of doing
whatever comes to you.
Yeah. And I've been really lucky. My good friend Savannah Odit and Alyssa Bradley, we've been able to collaborate with. They design t-shirts and I design accompanying accessories for the t-shirts, and so that's been really, really fun. It's under the name of Celestial Sisters. So we have another collection coming up. We're actually gonna this Tuesday. Yeah, I think this Tuesday we're gonna be hinting at the next one. So yeah,
I would say you're hearing this first, but we're releasing this episode on Wednesday, so
sorry.
If
you go to the social media, you will see it. Very excited about that. That should be coming out. That collection will be coming out this month. But we basically have gone ahead and said, okay, quite unfortunately, there's not a lot of like female character based merchandise. It's with Star Wars, Yeah. So we said, all right, let's make our own stuff. So they'll often come up with, shirts that embody a particular character, and I'll come up with the jewelry for it. So
that sounds really cool.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
It's interesting. It's interesting because you mentioned that this, in a way, was sparked out of Star Wars Celebration Chicago, and it's interesting because we've talked to like a lot of people we talked to a couple of people recently, and we've been hearing kind of the same thing, how Celebration, not necessarily Chicago specifically, I just mentioned Chicago because it's the most recent one, the one that people have been bringing up more often, but it seems like when these conventions happen, all of a sudden, like there's more of an influx, right, of people feeling like that motivation and kind of positivity and fandom, right, to kind of go out and do the thing that makes them happy. So that's something I wanted to ask to you about. Like, one, obviously you already answered the first part, which is you've definitely been to a Star Wars Celebration before, but was Celebration Chicago your first one? Had you gone to like another one? And then kind of tied into that is like our eternal question of like, what's your like experience with the fandom, not only like at Celebration, but then in general? Because I know the Star Wars fandom is a very volatile and interesting, place to be in.
Just smidge. Yeah.
It's been amazing. I think I've been to 4 now celebrations. I've been really lucky because I do live in Orlando, so they were, I mean, they stopped, which I was like, they were kind of doing where it was like every other year it was in Orlando for a while. So that was my first celebration, was the beginning of high school. My second one was like the end of high school. And then I had another one that was right when I was in makeup school a couple years later. And then I went to Chicago. Chicago was actually my first away one
from Orlando.
But but I really feel like Chicago was when I first started like really getting into like online fandom and like meeting people and stuff like that. So I would say Celebration was like such a transformative experience for me. It was just it was awesome. I think getting me through the past year has been thinking about like, oh, we had such a great time in 2019, and like Celebration was so fun, and
2022
and looking forward to the next one, because
2022.
Yeah, because I think I was always kind of nervous about like, that was my first like away con in general. I mean, I've been going to conventions for like a really long time, and I go to all the ones in my general area. But so that kind of, I guess, like burst the bubble of, okay, I'm gonna go to this as many years as I can. Like, I'm not gonna care if I have to travel for it. It's gonna be great. So yeah, so super fun. And I mean, I think I've been really lucky for the most part. I would say I've had such a great experience with the fandom. I think occasionally you have people that are not great. That like pop up in your mentions for no reason, that just comment something negative to comment something negative, and it's just like, okay, like
whatever.
away demon. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like, you know, I am so grateful that, especially like with the shop, like I feel like I've met so many amazing people like all in through having like my shop and through going to conventions, and I really feel like you meet the best people through these fandom interactions. So yeah, of course there's the negative, but really overwhelming positive.
Great to hear. And you mentioned Alden, so like that's one thing that we definitely want to talk about. It's like through the show you have like a spin-off show, I guess we could call it, the Mandatorian Creed, which congratulations for. I think you're on the second season now. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the show, how it came about, what's the future for it, since you know it's a relatively new show, right?
Very new, within the past couple months. So no, it's been amazing. So Alden reached out to me, I think it was like May of last year. And that, so the shop had kind of been a little bit of a thing. Like I had started obviously just selling the things that I already had and started kind of plugging that to get some cash flow going. But you know, by that point I had like a couple new releases, a couple new items. And so he reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to like interview you for my show. And so I said, okay, random man, sure. Like I was kind of nervous. I was like, I don't know. Because I had been on a few podcasts, but it was like people that I really knew, you know? So
I love that. Okay, random man.
Okay, I know. It's like,
random man.
I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes, you know, where it's a random guy, you're like, I gotta like kind of vet this, right? Like I kind of gotta make sure I know what I'm getting into. So so I went on, and we're just friends ever since. And he's had me on a couple times since. He's had like a lot of really fun. We did like a horror one, like if you could make a Star Wars horror movie, what would it be like stuff like that. And so he had lightly mentioned like, hey, I'm considering about kind of making it a network, like what if you had your own show? And I was like, I don't know. But one day on Twitter I made a thread about Star Wars weekends, which I kind of do every couple months if you follow me. But I said, wouldn't it be cool to at least like make a podcast about this, right? This is something that I felt comfortable talking about. I did feel kind of like an expert about it, right? And so he was like, let's do it. And I was like, okay. So we did. And so it's been really fun. I'm like you said, I'm on my second season. The 2-part finale, the first part's already out, the second part will be out this next week on lightsabers, which has been really fun. We kind of go into lightsaber hilt design, the kind of pop culture influence and merchandising and all of that. But the first one was Star Wars weekends, which I'm very passionate about, and it was exciting because there were a ton of people on the internet that had gone a bunch like I did, but we never met.
the
like you
strangers that you never
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
crossed
but they were
paths,
there at
but
the
you
same
never
time you
met. Yeah.
were.
I mean, that's how I feel with Celebration all of a sudden. Like we keep talking to people, and
Yeah.
we were there, and it's like, what? How did I not meet these people?
How did I not meet you? Yeah.
Amongst
Well,
thousands of
I
people
mean,
that are
there are
there, though.
thousands and thousands of fans. So.
Yeah.
True.
Absolutely. No, but it's wild. It's wild to think about how you've been in these same locations as all these people and you just never met until the internet. So yeah, but we had, I was really excited to get like some really nice feedback on that first season. And one of the people who was like a performer in Star Wars Weekends reached out and said, you know, it made my like day to hear about how like impacted you were. And I know, I was like, oh. So it was really emotional to see that it be so well received. But yeah, so I'll be doing a new series in a couple weeks here. I have yet to figure that out, but kind of the aim of the show is just to kind of pick a topic and go into it, you know, discuss design if we can, discuss maybe some lore. Like I basically just really enjoy assigning myself book reports, I guess. So that's kind of what it is.
I like
which
book
I think
reports.
Is one of, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, book reports are interesting though, because I was gonna get into like a lot of podcasts or YouTube shows from other Star Wars nerds, right, that are out there. Is so much of like, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but it's so much of the same thing. It's just like, well, let's just discuss what the show that's out or the movie that's out or the book that's out, and it's like that's fine. But like, at least me personally, and I think one of the things we like to do with the show too is kind of do some of these deep dives on topics or different areas of the lore or you know,
the
or
myth,
whatever, right, that's out there that we want to explore in a different way. So it's always nice to find, you know, people like you that also have like that fascination, right, and that'll look at Star Wars from a different lens as opposed to like, did I like this episode or not, type of thing, which is great because we do that too.
100%. And that's why, like, when I was looking into, you know, doing this, that's kind of when it seemed like, oh, maybe I can do this. Maybe this is something, because it really did feel like when Alden first asked me, I said, this seems like really overwhelming because there's so many good podcasts out there. And you're right. Like there is, and again, it's never like the same thing, but it's a lot of the same kind of topics. And I find that I really enjoy more of those, like yours, is like your podcast, like more deep dive things and things that are more specific to different topics, as opposed to, like you said, like what's the flavor of the week, what's the new thing out, you know. So,
or all the mainstream stuff, and not focusing, you know, on people like you, like the creators that have something to actually contribute to it, instead of you know, just whining about not liking what this character did,
right,
you know, so
which is fine. Whining and complaining is good, but when the whole identity of the thing is just to do something, it's like, what are you really contributing back to the fandom? So I think one of the interesting things that creators can do is like give back.
It kind of boggles my mind how some people have built like an entire almost like little empire on like being
negativity.
But you know,
I mean, and I love that we went down on this mini tangent, because it's very organically kind of flowed into like the second part of our conversation for today's episode, which would be like canons and contradictions in the Star Wars universe. And it's a topic that was sparked upon last week by episode 1 of the Bad Batch, when a certain, well, it's been out a week, so it's not a spoiler, but just in case, spoiler alert, when a certain Jedi called Kanan Jarrus, then named Caleb Dune, was with his master, and all of a sudden Order 66 happens, and it did not quite happen the exact same way as it did on the Kanan Jarrus comic book, which I'll be upfront to say I haven't read it because I can't possibly read everything. I'm sorry.
No, it is truly impossible
to read everything. You just can't. There's no way.
But apparently, well, not apparently, there was some contradictions, and actually, I don't even consider them a contradiction. But events didn't play out exactly in the same way, and it sent some fans in an uproar about like, what's the point of having a story group if they're like all the media is going to contradict each other, which I don't agree with what that point of view at all necessarily, but that sparked this conversation. So we're not necessarily going to talk about what those contradictions are, but like what does it mean in terms of Star Wars storytelling. So why don't we start with you, Tori? What do you have any like thoughts on this canon outcry?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same wavelength here. I was kind of like, I don't really feel like I have anything super, like I don't really have a massive opinion either way, if that makes sense. I'm kind of like about it, because I can see the maybe a little bit of the upset with the story group thing, but I think these are such small, from what I've seen anyways. Like you said, it's impossible to read everything, so I'm not super well versed in the Cobb Vanth like discrepancy that you have on here, but for me, I think this is not like we made Kanan a Sith Lord. Like, it's such a small little thing that does not change the the vibe of the character hasn't changed. Like, who they are as a person at their core has not changed.
Right.
This is it's a small little discrepancy. So for me personally, I'm not like super mad about it. At the same time, I and this is kind of something that I've just kind of started viewing Star Wars this way with in the past year, I would say, is kind of, and I know there's a story group, but I think it's interesting to look at things from a point of view of, this is a massive galaxy, right? And some of these things are almost, in some ways, like some of the comics feel almost legend-like in the way that they are told. So of course there's going to be little discrepancies between, right? Like, of course there's going to be a little difference. Of course, maybe there's a little bit of an exaggeration or something like that. I actually like the 2D Clone Wars that they just recently put on Disney Plus. I love that. I grew up with that and I thought it was the best thing ever. But clearly that's not canon. But when I watch it, I almost think of it, and I think my friend Nikki Kumar from the Imperial Senate podcast, when he had me on, we had this discussion and he kind of felt the same way. It's almost like you're watching how someone would tell this story if it was a legend in that universe. And so for me, I kind of feel like these little differences, it's like, oh, it's just like a little difference in the story because someone else is maybe telling it. But I don't know. I'm not literally super mad because it's never a super impactful thing, right? That's a difference.
Right. Exactly.
From a certain point of view. I mean, it's true. I mean, even in real life history, it happens. Like, depending on who's telling the story changes. So you can't expect it to be the same way all the time. Like, you have to allow your stories to be fluid and grow. And like you were saying, it's not a huge thing. It's not you're making him a Sith Lord. I mean, you're just
I love that
changing details.
Like, the other end
of his eyes glow yellow and it's like,
it's like, oh wait, what happened?
Imagine.
But
that would be awesome.
Oh, if they did. If they did do that.
I'm still waiting for the real red canon of going back and making Jar Jar a Sith Lord. We all know it's real. We all know that
Jar Jar. Yeah.
Jar Jar is.
They should just do a Legends book about it and just lay it through. It's just, okay, here's your Legends book. Just enjoy it.
Here's your Legends book. Enjoy it.
No, I think it's interesting because to Nani's point, it's like, you watch MSNBC or you watch Fox News or you watch CNN, like you get different versions of the same story. And people don't get upset about, people do get upset, but they don't take it personally as people do with like these fictional worlds. And for me, it's like, it's less important in a fictional world in that sense that things are, canonically consistent. But it's interesting because we had done like a post on Twitter, and then Kevin Scott did like a similar post on Instagram where it's like comparing it to the Bible, where like the Gospels all, tell more or less the same story of Jesus's life through all four of them, but then there's certain points that there's discrepancies on, and the Bible's like, hey, let's print this book. It's the highest selling book of all time, and it's fine, and no one really complains about it, and it's just like, well, because it's fine, and there's no Bible story group, and that's fine. All of a sudden, a fictional work of of art is dissected in that way when nothing in it necessarily impacts the essence of the story. The essence of the Kanan comic is that the clones turned on him and his master died and he had to escape.
Exactly. And it traumatized him. Yeah.
And what happened in Bad Batch? The clones turned on him, killed his master, and the last words that she had were the same one. So it's just like, what changed? It was day in one and it was night in the other, or the Bad Batch were there, or the Bad Batch weren't. I'm not sure if the Kanan comic was from his point of view But if
I
it's
was
from
gonna
his point
say,
of
yeah,
view,
it could
it's
also
like,
be a difference in how he perceived it, right?
right.
Because
So,
if the other one was from Kanan's point of view, then they wouldn't. He might just remember them being just another stormtrooper, another clone troopers. Like they wouldn't be like specifics
because they all turned. Yeah,
they all turned. So
and the trauma's still there, and it doesn't contradict anything from his character later on in Rebels. So I don't understand sometimes.
It's funny because like even the whole like the intro, it's like a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Like you're already setting up. We already know stories change through time, history,
and this is a long time ago. So
it's not about truth; it's about what history ends up recording, and this is what we're seeing in Star Wars. It's like, oh, there's just that history, and like what you were saying, Tori, like everybody has a different perspective of what happened, and like that's the beauty of storytelling. Like,
I mean, how many versions are there of the King Arthur myth? Of the Robin
Hood, Peter Pan,
of Peter Pan. There's all of it. There's a million versions, and you can't just be like, oh, this just sucks and it's terrible because it's not exactly how it happened in this one comic. Like you can't do that because
you definitely have the right to be angry.
Well, you can, but
but I think
come on, like is that
like the overall experience sucks if you're just like so caught up in this small little
and then you're unable to enjoy, new things that come about.
Yeah, which at that point it's just like maybe it's time to step away and kind of like, okay, maybe I need to find something
reevaluate.
Maybe it's not about you anymore. Maybe it's
I mean, that's the thing. It's never. That's the point.
True.
It's never about me. These stories weren't written for me. These stories were written, and if I happen to connect with them, then it becomes more enriching. But if it doesn't connect with me, then I can just set it aside and then find something else. So I don't understand why some of these people are like taking this so personally, because if it's not connecting with you, then just cast it aside and find that one thing that gives you that joy and that that happiness.
Exactly.
Right from storytelling. Like we don't have time for negativity, especially after the year we had last year. But I think there's I think there's also places where we can nitpick, and like one thing that I was thinking about was post backstory, and it's not necessarily in terms of like the contradictions, but more so in the carelessness I feel like some of the storytellers were having in like crafting those stories, because I'm not particularly sure about your opinion on Rise of Skywalker, Tori, but like we personally felt like that movie didn't particularly work as well after the beauty that was The Last Jedi. Especially when one of the things was like the blatant disregard that I felt that JJ and Chris wrote it on like the setup and build up that Last Jedi
and ignoring the character development. Yes.
And then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, what happened here? Especially with like Poe, it's just like, well, you clearly didn't even bother to make sure that there was even a spiritual consistency with what was set up for this character. I think that's completely different, right, from what happened with Bad Batch. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you feel it falls under the same category?
No, I could see what you're saying with that. Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about it a lot because it's a lot. It's painful. I think some people, it gets ugly with the Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
I would say. So I'm not talking about a ton. Am I a particular fan of the way it went for quite a few characters? No. And I do think a large part of that is kind of what you were saying, which is there seems to be a little bit of a disconnect there with kind of the way that they were developing. Like it didn't really feel like that development was continued per se. And again, I'm of the opinion with a lot of these movies, like who even knows what happens behind the scenes, who even knows what influences are at play here. So to try and kind of look at it and be like, oh, this is all your fault. Like, I don't know, who even knows what happened, but I do agree. And I think that's a little bit of a different scenario, because I do think that there are some pieces of Star Wars, not many of them, mind you, but you might find something where you say, this doesn't really fully feel like maybe the character, right? And I totally get that. And again, that's how I kind of felt with that movie. But at the same time, you know, I'm not the one telling the story. So maybe that was their intent, and maybe it doesn't feel right to me, but you know, to someone else it might feel right. So
that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've read some very compelling defenses on Rise of Skywalker. I don't agree with them, but they're very compelling.
Yeah. And we have talked to some people that actually really enjoy it. So I mean, it doesn't have to. You don't have to.
It's still enjoyable. It's just
great. Yeah.
And you don't have to 100% love everything that comes out from the saga. Exactly. Like it's the same with like Marvel. Marvel throws out so much stuff. You don't have to love every single movie or every single thing to still love the universe that it's built in. So
correct. You're so right. Yeah. And like you were saying, like with the defense, like the arguments, you know, the defenses for things that maybe you don't like it is interesting to see like people can have so many different reads of different situations, and that's honestly what's so exciting about being a part of this fandom. You know, like I wasn't particularly a fan of kind of Rey going back to Tatooine and all of that, because from the way that I see it, I just kind of view Tatooine, I mean, yes, it's a fun, interesting place, but it really seems to be, specifically for the Skywalker family, like a place of pain. I mean, you have, you know, Luke loses, you know, Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen there. You know, Leia.
Anakin is raised in slavery
and kind of in chains there, and Anakin hated it. And so it really feels like, to me anyway, it seemed like a very weird place to put it. And I understand kind of the bringing it back around, but I've seen a lot of people talk about, you know, Rey is such a strong character, such a strong female character, and you know she does take up the name Skywalker, and it's kind of poetic when you think about like it all started with Shmi on Tatooine, and I was like, oh, like that's okay. I look at this now a little different. I think, wow, that's like actually kind of beautiful when you look at it from that perspective, you know. So yeah, it's all about perspective.
And the more we have informed decisions to make down the road. That's the beauty of like, don't deny more.
I mean,
opinions,
I think
like opens them.
Yeah, at one point we were kind of hating on Rise for a while, and then we had Brian from Pink Milk over, and he told us that ending of Rise was one of the most special things for him, is because he has adopted children, and the fact that she chose to be a Skywalker, it's like she chose that identity. It doesn't matter that I come from the Palpatine line, like I chose to be a Skywalker, and this is my family, and I'm accepting that this is my family. And it's like the whole found family, and all three of us were like, damn, that just changes my perspective on that ending so much. And that's what you have to, you know, be aware of, that to some people, maybe things that we don't like are very inspiring to them, and be opening to hearing that opinion and be like, wow, okay, I didn't think of it that way, but wow. Yeah,
interesting for sure.
So
that's why it's always more helpful to have the dialogue and be constructive and open, even if it doesn't necessarily change your mind about it, but at least, you know, be like, hey, let's not just, you know, disregard X person or Y group and catalog everyone else as a fake fan just because you don't like the same movies I do. It's like, no, because the same people that are doing that now, I theorize, are the people that were, you know, to use a current word, canceled when they were prequel lovers. And now it's kind of like, well, now I'm returning the hate back, and like now I'm a sequel hater. And it's just like, just feeding into the cycle of hate, and you know that's the dark side. So we're not the dark side. That is
the dark side.
We're not there for that. We're here about growth and compassion and love. So
only the Sith deal in absolutes.
And that is an absolute statement.
Also correct.
Yeah. I was like, whoa.
The Jedis are kind of hypocrites too. So well,
remember that was not a Jedi from the High Republic. It's different. But moving from canon, there's a different conversation also that happens every once in a while. And when it's once in a while, it seems like it's every other week that something is published. And that is the possibility of an adaptation. Adaptations come in different forms, be it a pre-existing legends story, or like a reinterpreting something that we've already seen in some of the canon stories. So how do we feel about adapting something that's already been presented in some sort of media, like transferring from either book form to live action, from animation to live action, or backwards, right? With some of the Dooku Jedi Lost stuff, where it was an audiobook, then not one-to-one the same thing, but it was kind of moved to like a regular book after they did the audio drama. So how do we feel about adaptations in Star Wars? Is it a thing that they should be looking to do more of, or is that something that's like we prefer them exploring new avenues of new stories?
So I would say my personal opinion and take on this is I think it's interesting. I think I would much rather see if something is kind of like an adaptation, so to speak. Like, okay, big example, the Obi-Wan show that's coming up. There are certainly things and people that I would like to see pop up in like flashback form. Like, I think it would be really neat to see Clone Wars scenes in live action, or maybe like a little bit of like a different scene that you maybe hadn't seen, but it's kind of in that same timeline. I'm specifically talking about Satine. I love Satine. I want to see her. Please.
I agree with you. Oh my God, Satine.
I think that's really exciting, and I think it adds to the story. I think it really adds to that connectedness of this universe. At the same time, I don't think I want to, like, I don't need to see like a complete rehashing of, you know, like her death in live action, like an entire movie on that or whatever, you know. So I'm cool with stuff popping up to like enhance, but I am at the same time I'm of the frame of mind that we have this vast galaxy and we have so many different timelines we can pull from. I would like to see them branch out even more. I really enjoy the High Republic stuff that's coming out. I would love to see some of that make its way into, you know, animation or live action. Acolyte. I kind of have a feeling, I was gonna say Acolyte definitely seems like that's where that's headed, but I would love to see more of that. I would love to see time periods and places and people that we haven't really seen before.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think it's very poignant, the question, actually, because if I'm not mistaken, I think today is the 30th anniversary of Heir to the Empire, or at least like
is it?
Time frame. Actually, I think today's the 19th anniversary of Attack of the Clones. And
it is, you're right on that.
And this weekend was the 30th anniversary of Heir to the Empire. And the thing that kind of brought up the conversation was Heir to the Empire, because some people are saying that Mandalorian now is doing like, it's backdoor doing a Heir to the Empire adaptation. And in my mind, it's just like, why? We have those 3 books published. Those stories are there. They're great. We love them. Go back and read them. It's like, why do we have to always like kind of go back and default to the thing that we always know we liked, which I think was, I mean, I love the sequel trilogy, but I think one of its misfires was that it fell too hard on giving us what we like and have
already seen. Yeah.
Right. And it didn't let it be its own thing like the prequels were. As more as you know, even though I have like mixed feelings about some aspects of the prequel, they were their own thing and they were unapologetic.
Yeah, and they went there.
But the sequels were like, we need to apologize for this, and
it's like we're kind of remaking the original trilogy here to make you guys happy
to various degrees.
A little bit,
I mean, but like Heir to the Empire. I mean, that was the first Star Wars book that I read when I started getting into Star Wars books, so it has, you know, a lot of meaning to me, but I don't need to see it live action because it's done. It's in the page. I want to see new things. And like I'm really loving the new Thrawn books. It's like, hey, that's the Thrawn I want. There's new Thrawn things that are completely disconnected from the Imperial, you know, conflict that we've grown tired of. So like that's why I'm also enjoying the High Republic. It's just like, let's just do new stories here.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, to begin with, like adaptations are difficult. You can't keep the story the same. Like something that reads some way in a book, you can't really do that in live action or something because the storytelling is different. And the way that some fans of Star Wars are, that they nitpick every single detail. If they don't do it exactly like it's on the books, people are going to get pissed. It's going to happen. You know that it is. But you can't, storytelling doesn't work that way. You can't translate completely and adapt something from book or comic to live action, because it doesn't flow the same.
Yeah.
I agree. You need to give them the ability to do the story the way it is. I mean, screenwriting is not the same as novel writing. So you have to have some leeway, and some fans don't understand that, and they want everything to be exactly the way that it happened. And it's bad storytelling if you do it that way. So
which at that point, it's like, why would we even want a adaptation of a beloved Legends novel if it's not going to be exactly the same way? It's just like, it's
leave
going
it
to be
alone.
exactly the same way if you reread it.
Just have the movie in your mind when you read it. Just
And then in your mind.
Yeah.
That's it.
Get a personal movie.
Yeah, exactly. Do it yourself. Do a fan movie. Fan movies are great for people like that. And it's a great avenue for you people to just, explore their creativity in that way. But like, let's not, do that.
So I really do hope that the third season of Mandalorian is its own story.
Right.
Me too. I'm like, I love it so much. It's definitely one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars. I'm nervous with like the like test tube like potential clone like scenario. Like I love, don't get me wrong, love the clones, but I'm like, there's so much cloning. Like if we could just for a while, no stories with cloning or like Palpatine, that'd be like great. And it's no disrespect to them.
Yeah.
Right.
We have a lot of that. It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just something else for a while.
Yeah.
Just
like a palate cleanser, just
and season 1 was so, we're just doing our own thing. We don't give a
that's why
we're just doing
beautiful.
And it was beautiful. And then the second season, it's like we have to plug in all these characters and make it all linked together and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, okay, fine. You're building a huge universe. So I get why you're doing it, but don't continue at season 3. Like you're done. You did it. Fine. Just go back to like being your own thing. Season 3, please.
Those are my hopes as well. Like I love season 2 was still in my opinion very, very good. I'm a little concerned because it was kind of like who's gonna show
doing
this
that
episode? Like we have a new, but I think overall it was handled pretty well. Like by the end I was pretty satisfied about it, but I agree. I hope it goes back to its season 1 roots because that's what was so special. And I like these bigger characters, obviously. Like I love Ahsoka, I love Bo-Katan, but I do want the show to continue to focus on these characters that they made specifically for the show that are just so great.
Yeah. And have them be the main characters again.
Yes.
Well, which I think is definitely a bigger possibility for season 3, especially since, Ahsoka's going to be off doing her thing in her show.
Correct.
And Boba Fett and Fennec are doing their
own thing
on their show, which I hope. I mean, not that I'm against like crossovers. I guess it's like Law and Order. They're doing the crossover with Maloney and Mariska. It's like that's cool, I guess. But it's gotta be. It's like Filoni said. It has to make sense to the story. Not be like hey, we're this giant conglomerate, and we're gonna plug in all our shows.
Yeah. Which I think they're doing a better job with Bad Batch. With the other characters introduced, like they are actually there for a reason, like Cut and all that stuff. So
I was so happy to see Sue. Anyway,
I know Cut and Sue. I was so excited. I was like,
So I thought it was gonna be Rex, but then I realized that like when they showed up on screen, that was a much better decision in terms of the storytelling for where Bad Batch was. So like, I'm glad I wasn't writing the episodes because clearly the team at Lucasfilm has a way better idea of like where to take these characters
than you.
Yeah,
I was really excited to see Cut and Sue again. I really was. So
cool.
I know. So I think they're doing that very well, better than the Mandalorian did. So I guess we'll see what happens with Mandalorian season 3, and with all their other content as well.
Everything, so much coming out. So
speaking of things that are coming out, and the announcement that Star Wars Celebration was moved up to May, I think it was last couple of weeks of May or March. I always mix the two. I apologize. There's going to be obviously announcements announcements were withheld from Celebration that was supposed to be in 2020, and obviously some of those things have been announced already. But I'm sure that the Lucasfilm still got some things to pull out and surprise us with once Celebration comes in. So do we have any speculation on what those things might be that they're going to show us there for the first time?
I think definitely like an Obi-Wan something, because I think at that point, I think that's probably when they'll like show some behind the scenes footage or like a trailer or something, right? Because I don't think there's a date yet for Kenobi, right?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a date or anything.
Or both.
For both.
But and then I feel like they'll probably announce something else, like clearly there's allegedly still the Rian Johnson trilogy is happening, Taika's project. Like, I'm sure they'll probably like maybe just announce more of a specific name for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my general prediction.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have like a big trailer like the last two celebrations, which are like Rise of Skywalker or The Last Jedi. Like, unless who knows, maybe, but
when is, I don't actually know because I think the next movie is Squadrons, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that the next one? I don't actually know when that's coming out though. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we could get that.
And I'm pretty sure that's maybe like the next film. We might get some Squadrons, maybe.
Yeah, that could be the big trailer,
the big reveal. Yeah.
Which will be really interesting. Which might go hand in hand with what we're talking, like something that might be a little bit like
of a different story,
separate from all the characters we've been involved so much.
And first one directed by a woman, so here we go.
True.
Exciting.
Yes. Good things. Yeah, we'll probably get that, and there'll probably be like a bunch of like smaller panels for sure. Like,
definitely.
Based on everything.
Publishing. We'll find out more stuff about High Republic, since like there's a billion faces of it and sub faces. There's still a bunch of new High Republic stuff that's going to be coming down the pipeline. So it'll definitely be a very nice celebration because we've been due for it. Obviously, COVID, we have to wait a little longer, so it'll be definitely nice to see everybody again and be, a fandom collectively and safely, because we'll still have to mask on
and hopefully meet all of you guys that we've been talking to, that we only meet through Zoom. We can actually meet.
We can
and have a drink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, will you be cosplaying or?
I don't really know. I think it's going to kind of depend. I was working on an armor cosplay. Like, I have the hammer almost made, and I have like files and stuff for the helmet. But with the mask roll, which I'm super for, and I hope they keep, I'm a little nervous with these events if they're going to keep it or not. But with that, like, clearly I couldn't wear the helmet, so I'm kind of like, okay, that's okay. That might actually be a little bit less stress on my part. Let's see what else I can get into. So I was thinking about maybe doing like a Nihil or Nihil, however you say it, from the High Republic. They're like kind of those, Viking-esque piratey. Like, I feel like that's a costume.
Sounds awesome.
If I like made my own, like if I was like, ooh, if I was one of them, what would I wear outfit? Like a mask could fit in pretty well with that, I feel like.
Yeah.
So probably maybe something like that.
Cool.
We'll see.
Okay.
That sounds cool.
That sounds super cool.
That sounds really cool.
Exactly. And you can do your own thing with it and not have to imitate someone else's thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling my friend, I was like, I feel like, and this was like when they were first announced, when they were doing all the really great like online High Republic panel reveals and stuff. I was like, this would be a really cool thing to just like get a group of people and you just like make your own outfit and you have like a horde of
like
space Vikings or whatever. Like, that's cool.
I mean, the one we went to in Orlando, they had a bunch of Mandalorians walking around, and they had a bunch of
exactly something like that.
Plans,
it's like more personalized, and I think a little more fun that way. So,
cool.
Add your own touches.
Hopefully we get to see it.
Yeah. If I do it, we'll see. I don't know. This could change a million times, so.
Or maybe you can do one for like each day, and that's you got time.
That's a lot. I mean, I do have time. That's true. Less time now, though. I was like, wow, now it's only a year.
No pressure.
No pressure.
or if you need someone else to wear it, I'll wear an armor.
Exactly. There we go. We got.
I'll sign up for that.
I'll sign up for you.
There you go. But with that, Tori, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you on the socials and everywhere else?
So you can follow my personal accounts are at the Mandatorian. That's Mandalorian, but with the T instead of the L. And that's on, I'm primarily on like Twitter and Instagram. If you want to follow any of my shop stuff, that will be at Creature Cartel and at Creature Cartel Shop. And that will be Twitter and Instagram respectively. And then if you want to check out the Mandatorian Creed, that is on the ahch-to radio feed. So all of ahch-to radio's socials are at ahch-to radio, and you can follow that feed wherever podcasts are. So
and we'll definitely be
we'll put the links below.
All of dropping some links
below, so it'll make it easier for everybody to go and follow.
Well, anyways, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Oh my gosh,
You're
it was
super
so
cool.
fun. No, you're super
super
cool. I had so much fun talking with you all. You guys are the best.
But anyway, with that, we are Triad of the Force. You can find us anywhere that podcasts can be found. YouTube, Twitter, just search for Triad of the Force. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. Just, stick around. We love Star Wars. We love you too. And with that, may the Force be with you.